Done. To take a look at our agenda for today. Right now, we are currently slated to do a Healthy Children's Fund audit at 3:40, and then a BTC letter to the task force at 4 o'clock, followed by a presentation from Heather, and then a vote on the report card. We are proposing that we move the voting on the report card to the very first item of business because we need to get that done at this meeting, and that's hard to do if we lose quorum. And then we're going to replace that at 4:40 with the Healthy Children's Fund audit. And then we'll move the BTC letter to the Healthy Children's Fund subcommittee. So just wanted to make a note on the change of the agenda as we fit those things in. Does that sound good to everybody? Allison, thank you for dropping that in the chat. All right, perfect. Hearing none, I will assume we are all good to go with the plan. So I'd like to start off with the land acknowledgement here. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are here today on the ancestral homelands of the indigenous peoples who have lived in the Salish Sea Basin and the North Cascades watershed from time immemorial. In particular, the Whatcom people, who we recognize today as the Lummi Nation, the Nooksack tribe, and Semiahmoo. May we be mindful of the inherent owners of this land, our children, who are our future stewards of the land and advocates for the generations to come. May that truth guide our work and efforts to improve the well-being of all families and children, native and non-native, living in this beautiful county. This land acknowledgement is not meant to be a substitute for authentic relationship building and understanding. It is meant to introduce us to one way that we can show respect and honor for the sacrifices of the first people of this land. Please join me in expressing our deepest respects for our Indigenous neighbors and gratitude for the enduring stewardship of our shared lands and waterway. So with that, I'll skip the task force purpose just because we are a little strapped for time. So what do you think? Should we do community shares? Max like 2-3 minutes?
I would love if they could put them in the chat if possible, and if they can't, they can raise their hand.
Perfect. I think that's a great way to go. Yeah. Anybody have any fun shares or shout outs, cool things that have been happening in the community? Feel free to put these in the chat. And with that, I will move us to our first order of business, the approval of the task force, the Healthy Children's Fund report card, or not Healthy Children's Fund, the Child and Family Wellbeing Task Force report card. So you should have been sent this about a week ago, and so you've had some time to review that. I will share it on my screen now here. Just as a quick reminder to provide some context on this report, the task force is responsible for approving 2 reports each year. There is the Healthy Children's Fund report card, which is an encapsulation of our work being done with the Healthy Children's Fund. And then there is this report. This is our sort of report to council that covers all the work that we do that isn't Healthy Children's Fund related. And so this is due in September. Hence, we are voting on it in August to have it to County Council in time for them to review. Like I said, this is everything that's not Healthy Children's Fund related. As the report will sort of indicate, the vast majority of the work that we've done as a task force this year has been related to the Healthy Children's Fund work. So in that regards, it is a little brief, but it certainly gets to the point. We spend the first little bit talking about some of the community engagement opportunities that we've endeavored to pull together in the last couple months. So big kudos to the team for that's sort of pulled that together. And then the second page is talking about first kind of encapsulates a lot of the local experts that we've invited to present and talk to us as we've sort of been figuring out what the next stage of our advocacy is going to look like. And so that the top of that second page is really dedicated to that. And then the bottom, we just do a quick little teaser, I guess, to County Council, sort of highlighting the fact that we are interested in learning how we can support families and children who are involved with the justice system here in the county, and kind of prelude to some of that work and let them know that to keep an eye out for some of that. I would love to open it up to the floor here. Does anybody have any thoughts, concerns, about this report before we call for a vote? Love to have some discussion there.
Colton, I got a direct message, just we need to edit the job title of Allison Williams in the top part of that report. So maybe that's a good reminder for everyone to make sure your name is spelled correctly and your title is the way you would like to see it in there.
Yes, thank you for highlighting that. I will make a note to get that updated before we formalize that. Any other thoughts from folks? Everything on this page especially look all right. I tried my best to get it all, but lots of little changes for sure. Okay, let's see. Can someone monitoring the chat? Anything coming in on chat? Okay, perfect.
I'm keeping an eye on chat, Colton.
All right, perfect. Well, I would like to offer up a 5-to-5 vote for us here. I believe that's how we do that for these reports. So just a reminder, a 5 is yes, I love this. This is great. Let's run forward with it. 4 is there might be 1 or 2 little things I'm a little iffy in, but overall, I think this is great. I believe a 3 out of 5 triggers a second round of voting if anybody has a 1, 2, or 3. Is that correct, Tesla? I always forget what the cutoff is there.
Honestly, I can't remember now either. I think it's 2. It's 2 that stops it. It's
okay.
3 is like it's fine.
All right.
Yeah, 2, 1, or FISC will result in further discussion.
Perfect. And then just as I'm trying to remember, Allison, do you prefer that those are dropped in the chat as well as on camera? Is that correct?
In the chat would be the preferred, and I will make sure that we account the folks in the room in the chat as well.
Okay, sounds great. All right, with that instruction in mind, I would offer a 5-to-5 vote to approve this report. Like I said, anything 3 to 5 is yes, let's move forward. Anything 2 or below is let's hold up. If you want to drop those in the chat now. And Allison, thank you for keeping track of that.
That's been approved. Thank you, Colton. Could you also circle back with the June meeting minutes too before you move along?
Indeed, I certainly can. Yeah,
Thank
let me get that pulled up here. Oh, I just conveniently have that ready to go. And do we 5-to-5 on this one as well? Or is this just a straight up or down?
Just thumbs up or thumbs down.
Perfect. Yeah, here are the meeting minutes for June. I trust that someone will be able to drop this into the chat. I have too many things up on my screen right now to find that.
Yeah, I can put it in the chat, Colton.
Oh, my hero. Thank you. You really are my saving grace today. All right. Beautiful. That has been dropped.
All right, that's been. I'm seeing folks say approve, thumbs up, approve, approve. Great, thank you for that participation. Approve, approve, approve. Approve, approve. We're good with that. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And sorry for missing that first time around. It was in my haste to get us on time. I've inadvertently put us ahead of time, I think. So perfect. Well, at this point, given our modified agenda, the next thing on the to-do list is our task force issues update and our jail planning and family-friendly policy presentation. So to provide a little bit of context here, you'll recall that over the last couple meetings, we've been having some conversations trying to identify, we've historically, the Healthy Children's Fund has been the big focus. of the task force work, and we have nailed that. And we have that pretty locked down now. We've formalized a lot of the processes. Things are still coming up, obviously, but we've hit our stride with that. And I've heard the co-chairs rather, have heard some appetite from folks to kind of look at some other ways that we can flex our advocacy muscle in support of children and families. And so over the last couple meetings, we've been exploring different options, and one area of focus has really risen to the top, and that's how can we support children and families who are involved with our justice system, especially within the context of the new jail that is to be built at some point. We'll see. So when the co-chairs were kind of thinking of who would be best equipped to give us give us a primer, a 101 orientation, one person really rose to the top, and that is Heather Flattery. She is the executive director for Chuckanut Health Foundation and is also a member of the Incarceration Reduction and Prevention Task Force. I think I got that right. She has a long history of advocacy in this community. I was also involved with the Healthy Children's Fund, getting that up and running. So, hey, we have something to thank there as well. So, Heather, I wanted to welcome you here today and really thank you for taking the time to school us up a little bit.
Oh, I'm so grateful for the opportunity. I was very excited for the invitation. And I also see a key partner and leader in this work, Councilmember Barry Buchanan here today. Barry, feel free to chime in at any time. I have some slides I'd love to share my screen and run through them. So let's see if I can make that work. Okay. So I wanted to, can everybody hear me okay too on the screen? Okay. I know that there's so much brilliance and expertise on this task force already. And I also don't know what everybody's walking in the room with knowing. So there's a little level setting part of this, but then I really want to just open it up to discussion and conversation about what the opportunities might be from your perspective. And I just think it's all connected. There's a reason why I'm a co-chair of the Incarceration Task Force and also worked really hard to get the Healthy Children's Fund passed. And that's because they're definitely connected. Before I dive into my presentation, I'd love to pause and just ask all of you what is on your minds and hearts and questions that you walked in the door with, so I can make sure that I'm focusing on those areas in my presentation. And if it's late on a warm Monday and you want to just get out of here, I'll just go through it too. So I'll start with, I'm realizing in my leadership journey that Theodore Roosevelt was right when he said that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And so I wanted to share a little bit about who I am. I've been deeply involved in criminal justice system reform in our community since 2014. I fought the jail in 2015 and 2017 and was a big part of those no campaigns. And then I don't break things and walk away. It's a value of mine. So, and I have a really incredible partner in Barry Buchanan who took a lot of leadership and said, let's go ask the community what they would support. So I helped co-design that listening tour to go out to all of the different parts of Whatcom County and ask people, what did you vote for and why? And what can we learn? And I worked with Barry on designing the stakeholder advisory process to really embed community health into the planning for what we need in our community. And then I fought for half of the jail sales tax to go to behavioral health and treatment. When we first started those conversations, Barry was a part of those too. Barry was a big part of that fight. But when we first started, the first draft was 0% to behavioral health and treatment and 100% to capital for the jail. So, and then I also personally have always seen the direct connections between investing in children and families upstream. And then when we don't get that right and kids fall through the cracks, the outcomes of kids ending up in our incarceration system. My mom passed away from addiction. My dad almost passed away from it. I'm a mom of 2 little kids. At one point this year, I was paying more than $6,000 a month in childcare. And I did fight very hard for the Healthy Children's Fund to be established. Was part of establishing this task force actually. And I'm privileged to serve as the executive director of the Whatcom Health Foundation, where every day I get to work for a vision of every child getting a healthy start and every person receiving the care they need throughout their lifetime. There's some pictures on here to give you a glimpse of me. That was my first picture of family of 4 with baby Booker. That's a picture of me on my college graduation day. I got my bachelor's of science in community health. That was the last day that I saw my mom. And then there's a little caption there. This was a first grade writing assignment about if I had 3 wishes, because I just think sometimes we come the way we are. And so I know it can drive people crazy that I have idealism and some naivete, but I think that that's really one of the things that helps the world change, is people showing up and saying, these are my wishes, these are my dreams. And I said, if I have 3 wishes, my wishes would be, if you can't read it, I'll read it really quick. Number 1, I wish that all the poor people were instantaneously rich and that they could get food and clothing and have houses to keep them warm. Number 2, if there were problems in your family, they'd all get cleared up. Number 3, there was peace in the world and there'd be no more guns, cigarettes, drugs, sickness, yelling, robbers, sex offenders, screaming, or bad words, weapons, bad people, and that everybody followed God's word and that there was no violence or fighting or hurting each other. P.S. If I had another wish, I'd wish if there was sick or hurt animals or people I could take care of them. And isn't that so much of what the Child and Family Wellbeing Task Force has been tasked to do too, to achieve all of those things? And then this is just a little picture of this tiny little plant. I don't know if it's still there, but a few weeks ago, this was sprouting up outside our county courthouse in that concrete, just the resilience and beauty of this. And I just had this moment of, sometimes when we're advocating with systems, it can feel like this, but you just have to really root down and keep growing. I'm not going to read this quote for the sake of time, but basically Ted Lasso also sums this up saying, hopefully we're either all judged by the best of us or the worst of us, and we need to have more mercy and compassion. So there's so many places we can go today. I was asked about who is in charge, what is the landscape of incarceration in the jail. I also like to have anchors of operations. What are the ordinances and the scopes and things that your task force takes care of and that the incarceration task force is responsible for. I've got some basic information about how it's all connected. And then I'd love to just have a lot of opportunity for dialogue about where you have energy and where you want to go and how I can be helpful in that. Really quick, if I were to try to draw a diagram of who's in charge, it'd be really crazy. This is just off the top of my head, all the different elected officials, people that have programs or decisions or budgets that intersect with the criminal justice system. We have the sheriff and corrections, we have our prosecutor, the courts and judges, pretrial services, probation, the juvenile system, district courts, we have the county executive and administration, county council, the public defender. They're all different offices with different rules, different responsibilities. And so when you say, where do you want to advocate, you have to get really thoughtful about, well, who's in control of what policy or what budget or what program, and figure out how to get into that place. So any questions about how complicated it is to make good change in our community? And then just briefly, some of our anchors, we all would like to be on this boat right now instead of in this room and on Zoom. So thanks for being here. I'm not going to read this to you because you know very well what the purpose of your task force is, but I just put it here to say that your recommendations about the jail is well within your purview. And also your opportunity with the Healthy Children's Fund is directly connected, and we'll get to some data in a few minutes about how it is. The Incarceration Prevention and Reduction Task Force also serves as our county's Law and Justice Council. We also have an enabling ordinance that is in county code. Our role is to make recommendations to safely and effectively reduce incarceration of individuals struggling with mental illness and chemical dependency, minimize jail utilization by pretrial defendants who can safely be released, and identify, examine, and recommend implementing programs and policies that focus on intervention and prevention strategies that are pursuant to incarceration. That's a lot of words. Our top 3 goals this year are: we want to establish best practices for the new jail, for the design of it and the operations of it, as well as the behavioral care center, which will be a huge opportunity for your advocacy. And then we need data. We still don't really know very well who is in our jail and why. We don't actually know how many parents are in our jail. And so that's a place where we could join forces and really advocate for support around that. And then diversion programs. We want to make sure that they're effective and that we're evaluating them and that we're expanding the ones that work really well and building ones that we don't have yet. We have 10 priorities, but those are our top 3. We also have this is sort of just an orientation. We have a justice implementation plan that we get quarterly updates on. We have 5 strategies, 15 projects, and the jail, the public health and safety jail sales tax is allowed to go towards everything that's in this plan. And this is the ordinance that enables that and establishes that. So the purpose of the sales and use tax is to provide funds for costs associated with public health, safety, and justice facilities and services, including a new county jail, behavioral health, supportive housing, public safety, and other criminal justice facilities and services in accordance with the Justice Project Implementation Plan. I think it's important to just go back to what does the ordinance say? And I think it's clear that there's overlap in what this the opportunity of this $300 million opportunity over the next 30 years, where there's places for us to work together for kids and families. And then just in case people don't know, prisons are different than jails. So this is just a nice diagram of how many people are in our local jails. This was updated for 2025 versus our prisons. Jails are typically run by counties and smaller jurisdictions. And you can see the different charges. And what's extremely interesting, and also a big opportunity for good change, is how many people are in our jails pre-trial. In Whatcom County, last I heard, the number was around 90%. That means 90% of the people have been charged and booked, but cannot afford their bail. And probably about half of them at least are parents. And then 10% are actually serving out a sentence of less than a year. That's kind of the rule. If it's more than a year, it's a prison sentence and you go to the Department of Corrections. If it's less than a year, you stay in our county jail. Barry, feel free to fill in any blanks and jump in if I'm inaccurately saying anything. So, where are there intersections? When I was invited to come here today, these were the things that came to my mind. You may have different things on your mind. And I just wanted to share some sort of level setting information about these things and then move into some more discussion. So parents who are incarcerated, clearly you all know that that is an adverse childhood experience. There's a lot of space for more prevention work, especially in our juvenile justice system, and that is an untapped space where task forces could really come together and do some good work. There's also some really nuanced and heartbreaking and complicated conversations around drugs and addiction and substance use treatment and disorders and child abuse and sexual abuse in our community. In the jail world, in the criminal justice world, we talk a lot about the PIDA continuum. We might talk about that too sometimes. That's prevention, intervention, treatment, and aftercare. And as I was thinking about places we could work together on the prevention side, investing in childcare and reducing those adverse childhood experiences, reducing the toxic stress. Intervention, there's space to really understand what is the school discipline practices and how does that connect to our juvenile system, and how are we strengthening the safety net programs and nonprofit supports around that moment of intervention. There's a lot of treatment advocacy too. How do we target for parents? And that behavioral care center will be a great place to do that. And then this balance of accountability with the generational trauma. And then aftercare or post-incarceration, so that, you know, most people who get charged with something or booked in our jail, they will come out of jail. And is our community going to be safer and healthier after that or not? And so much of that depends on what is the experience, program, support, design, everything that they have that happens to them in jail. And then recovery and opportunities and supportive housing. And my goals are I want to support kids so they never end up in our system in the first place. I always think about that target, the idea of targeted universalism and the universal here of good jobs, safe housing, affordable childcare, prenatal care, and then the targeted supports of reducing those ACEs and abuse and toxic stress. I think we can establish stronger programs and processes for kids who have parents who are incarcerated, and it sounds like that might be the area you're most interested in exploring. And then, of course, your work actually is supporting so much of those underlying causes of incarceration when you're addressing expanding childcare, expanding behavioral health supports, preventing family homelessness, and the drivers of all of those. A lot of this science, I'm sure all of you could teach me. Children have 3 specific needs to progress mentally and healthily during childhood. This is a Department of Justice document: safety, stability, and nurturing. This is a whole bunch of words to say that there was a meta study done by the American Academy of Pediatrics. And it just says that kids who experience adverse childhood experiences they have a much higher chance of being incarcerated. I appreciate this diagram of the roots of the community that lead to the outcomes of adverse childhood experiences. And then there's this report about how many people incarcerated have experienced different types of adverse childhood experiences. So you can see 50% had verbal abuse in their home, 41% had physical abuse, 18% had sexual abuse. There's just a direct correlation. And so your work already is supporting that. And then this graph shows on the left, you can see people who have been to jail a lot tend to have a lot of ACEs as well. And then the graph on the right shows based on gender, the prevalence of the different adverse childhood experiences. I'll share these slides with you. You can reference them. I know I share a lot of information and I can't help it. I'm sorry. There's also an intersection here of opportunity around neglect and child abuse and when children are victims of crime. And I think our community hasn't had a very robust conversation about that need for balance of harm reduction and acknowledgement of generational trauma and accountability for actions and what that looks like in our community, right? In 2024, man arrested in Bellingham after toddler overdoses on fentanyl. An 18-month-old toddler puts a straw in his mouth that his dad had been using to smoke fentanyl. And that was just on Mackenzie Avenue in Bellingham. There's a story that haunts me that you may be aware of, that a 3-month-old baby was neglected and starved to death. And then 3 Whatcom residents were charged with a 5-year-old's overdose a few years ago as well, who overdosed from fentanyl. So there's real serious consequences. And I know you know that, and I don't think we should look away. And there's a lot we can do to help prevent these things from happening. And I know you're also well aware of the DCYF report of the critical incidences, more than double over the same period for the last year. 68% of them were opioid related. Their report out said that the 2 drivers they're seeing are opioids and fentanyl and increased toxic stress on families. And they also say what we need. And I wanted to share that with you because I think I just want to bolster that you are already working on so many things that are directly connected. Home visiting, public health nurse interventions, social safety net for families with high needs, mental and behavioral health access. Then we have the place of when parents become incarcerated. You all probably know it's very clear that there's a big impact on kids and their health and their opportunities when they have a parent who's been incarcerated. And there's a long legacy of when kids are separated from their parents, the impacts on whether or not they are healthy and have successful outcomes and end up in our jails too. The numbers nationally, 1 in 8 poor children have an incarcerated parent, 1 in 9 Black children, 1 in 14 of all children. So you can see there are disparities, not just based on race, but also based on income and poverty levels. And in thinking about the design of the jail, but also the opportunity to support the prosecutor in making good policy around charging decisions, because the prosecutor has so much power to divert people out of the system. But this story, we were separated while AB was still breastfeeding, and I was terrified that AB would forget who I was because I was away for so long. When we were first separated, AB went from breastfeeding to being fed from a bottle, and she barely ate for over 2 weeks. She would cry herself to sleep. As a mom of young kids, that hits home, just thinking about if you are pregnant and in jail, if you have your baby while you're in jail, and then that attachment that is so important in those first months and years of life. And I think what's amazing about Whatcom County is that we have leaders that come to children's task force meetings like Barry, that we can call people, we can ask for better design in our jail. And you guys I would really love, and I'm excited to invite you to be in those jail design conversations and make sure that this is something that people know that we care about as a community, whether there's space in the jail for kids to stay with their parents and it's designed in a way, although that sounds heartbreaking, and more so it's like, how do we get the prosecutor and the supports outside of the jail to help the parents stay with the kids. There's also a big opportunity to intervene and provide care earlier on. I had the privilege of doing a deep dive into a bunch of our prosecutors' files, and one of the big takeaways was that nearly half of the sample that I looked at started committing their crimes before the age of 18. And about 75% before the age of 26, and everything we know now about brain development, right? That brains don't fully develop. And what this chart shows on the bottom right is the time the person who was incarcerated committed their first crime. So 12 is the first one, and how many charges or arrests they had. So this 12-year-old was arrested 36 times and was in our jail. 13-year-old 26 times, 15-year-old 24 times, and so on. And what that tells me is that jail wasn't working for that person. Clearly they got out and then they came back. And so there's a huge opportunity for you guys as well to join forces on how can we make sure that first of all, that hopefully they're not going to commit a crime in the first place, and that if they do, they don't leave worse off. And then there's just need for protective factors and advocacy across the board. You have great plans. You have the Child and Family Wellbeing Action Plan. You have the Healthy Children's Fund Implementation Plan. You have dreams and visions here at this table. We have the Justice Implementation Plan and the Public Health and Sales Tax Ordinance as well. And it's just the daily decisions and discipline sometimes that we need to really make sure that there's fidelity to implementation, that we're doing what we said we were going to do. Even the DCYF, this is the list, we know what we need to do, right? In our world, we look at the sequential intercept model a lot. You can see on this chart, intercept 0 is community services. These are all the places where we could intervene and do something different. So we have programs in place at these different intercepts. And then I didn't include the other charts, but there's a link when I send this out. There's a place where we say what exists but needs more investment, and then there's a place where we say what doesn't exist but needs to be built too. So in each of these bullet points, there's a place where we could be looking at how is this serving families and kids in this program, in this intercept. It can get complicated a little bit, but it's really important, and there's just so much opportunity. And your work at this task force before Intercept Zero, right? Before they even get to the community services need or the law enforcement interaction, it's so critical. And I wanted to share with you this coalition that I stumbled upon, Fight Crime, Invest in Kids. Thousands of police chiefs, sheriffs, prosecutors, they say the 4 approaches that work. You're doing so much of it already, and I love it. You make high quality early care and education available to kids from birth to age 5, offer voluntary parent coaching, provide effective school day and after school programs, and help kids who have contact with the juvenile justice system by providing them and their parents effective interventions to steer them away from crime. So to sum it up, this is how I think about it. In 2018, this was the one quote I stood up and said at the listening tour. When they asked, what do you want to see? What do you want to invest in? I said, I believe that with a problem this complex, you have to look at the full spectrum of what is causing it. We can go all the way upstream to making sure that children are born to healthy mothers who really want them and that schools are really good. And we have kids who are getting to full day kindergarten ready to learn, and they are graduating from high school and have opportunity. We need to look at equity and diversion and make sure people are getting a fair start. We need to try to get people to never even enter the criminal justice system. And then if they do, we need to look at how do we help them re-enter society and how do we support them? How do we get them job training? With every single individual, there is a different circumstance. Some need drug addiction treatment, we know that. Some need mental health treatment, we know that. It's 100 things that have to work together. There is no one sweeping solution. So that would sum up my entire presentation. And here's just a quick summary of the opportunities I touched on, and I'd love to open it up to conversation and hear your thoughts and questions. I do want to say jail design planning is underway. Just like you, we have a kind of a complex setup of subcommittees. I can point you to the right ones to go to. And I think you could invite the sheriff and the corrections deputy, Caleb Erickson, here to have a conversation with them too about what can we do in the jail as it stands now, even before a new jail is built. Juvenile justice system, again, is a great place that I think you guys could have some wins in. And then also support for the people in the system. I called one of the prosecutors today to say, what do you think I should say today? And he said, you know, one thing is like for the people who are working on crimes that have been committed against kids, there's a lot of secondary trauma too of working on those cases. And that's a reality. We have kids who are being harmed, and we have parents who are being harmed, and we want to prevent. And so we have to do all those different things. And he was saying, what if we had better support and training for those parents or for the prosecutors? And on the right is a picture of the 5-year results that we had hoped for and wrote down in 2020 that your task force and the Healthy Children Fund was going to accomplish. So we could just keep working on those too, and I think we'll solve a lot of things. So I will close there, and I can't wait to hear what you all think. Councilmember Barry, you raised your hand, and I see Sterling raised his hand too.
Yeah, thanks, Heather. That was just a fantastic job of really laying out the thinking that's gone on for the past 4 or 5 years. And what I noticed, I saw a lot of these things going by in the chat, a lot of these questions. I think you stole my thunder when you talked about the sequential intercept model, because that's where you could take these kind of things like SUD treatment, the question that came that, and overlay it into that sequential intercept model. And what we tried to do when we created the implementation plan was to have programs that were defined in that implementation plan that were very connected to the sequential intercept model. Re-entry is a huge thing. We should be planning on re-entry when the day one that people arrive and are put into custody. They should be planning what they're going to do when they get out, and have help doing that. So I think, Heather, that was just a great job. And the way you can support this and help is as exactly how she said, and that's for the task force to make recommendations to the council through your lens. I think I'm going to make sure that we get some sort of a memo out to all of our task force to ask the same of them, because that's how we get these things to happen. Is community engagement and talking to folks that are engaged in our task forces and our advisory committees. So thank you all for your work. I picked a good one to fill in for Councilmember Scanlon. So anyway, thanks again, Heather, and thanks for having me, Colton.
Yeah, thank you, Barry, for being here. We appreciate it, Councilmember. Anyone else have any thoughts here? No, there was one other hand that got raised.
I could say a few things to Sterling Chick. First of all, intercepts. Judy's Eels, when we were talking about developing children, she called them windows of opportunity. So I always use that for when we're talking about little kids. It's incarceration is unique in all of the ACEs, and there's no clear traumatic thing that happens, divorce, substance use, mental illness, all those things in families, and of course, abuse and neglect are all pretty obvious. So what's different about this one is it doesn't have clearly, although there could be could have witnessed domestic violence and all those other things. But what's unique about this, and this is my experience having 30 years of watching this happen, working with little kids and 25 years at CCS and working in Atlanta and Phoenix. What often happened is the parents' relationship with their child was severed permanently. They never got it back. And that window of opportunity is a total miss. That's the tragedy. And if we could do anything about that, that would be awesome. And so I know that the jail is crowded and they don't do much of that right now. And I don't even know what their processes is, but I don't think we even ask. I bet we don't ask when a person's being put in jail. Do you have children? Do you want to see them? How do we make that happen? And so just some of the things that it's a missed opportunity. Yeah. And it's a window for sure. And so that's my piece about that.
Thank you, Chick. See, Sally has a hand raised.
Thank you, Heather. That was really helpful. I was really, really excited for your presentation and to hear it. And an easy way to say it, or as we would say to people, if you didn't want to have to vote for another jail tax, you just needed to vote for the Healthy Children's Fund, right? Because it's all about that initial phase. What I appreciated hearing, it sounds like, at least my thinking was, you were going to come and we were going to figure out how we could make recommendations related to the jail and its design. What I heard you saying is think bigger, because there's a bunch of other opportunities out there. So, that is exciting. That being said, practically speaking, what can this task force do with regard to having a voice in this big thing that is happening in the county? It just seems like it's a very overwhelming thing that the county's doing in this jail planning. Are we going to be effective there? Is it more realistic to just put our support behind other groups and look at these other policy things? What are your thoughts on that?
So I think I would like you to join in the conversation. There's so much need for people like you and the Children's Task Force as a whole to show up and advocate and share your voice and perspective, and expertise. And right now, there's a Finance and Facilities Advisory Board that was formed to oversee the public health and safety sales use tax. And those conversations are real time. Just in July, the county they hired a few months ago an owner's rep firm called STV to help manage the building of the jail, because it's the biggest capital project I understand that the county's ever undertaken. And STV did an analysis on how big should the jail be? What are the beds that we need? What are the specialized beds and units? And one thing I did notice at the conversation is that there is a real commitment and a philosophy at the table of, we want to have a trauma-informed jail. It's hard when you've been an activist against the jail to, like, how do you make a family-friendly jail? It's like an oxymoron, right? And So that's a reality, but it's real-time conversations that you could come as individuals and join in and listen and raise your hand and say, hey, you're not thinking about families in this way. You're not thinking about kids in this way. You could come to the incarceration task force meeting too, because just the reality is that when you're an advocate and you keep showing up, it's easy to start having your voice tuned out because it's like, well, there's Heather again, caring about the same thing. No one else cares about it. Let's just ignore Heather, right? And so if there's a different voice that comes to the table, that actually makes a huge influence on the policy decisions. And I think that a lot of times people just don't know until they know. And so everybody wants to do the best thing they possibly can. And 10 years ago, the conversation was really different. 10 years ago, there was a lot more people showing up saying, just lock them up, like punishment is the thing. Now people are like, no, we need treatment. And in fact, the conversation now about the behavioral care center, again, real time, like just last week, the prosecutor's office sent a letter of support because there was a big discussion about should we build this behavioral care center to be inside the jail. Therefore, people have to be incarcerated in order to get the services they need, which I philosophically struggle with that. Or can it be built outside the jail and serve multi-purpose functions? But if it's built outside, then what's the thing that would keep somebody in there? So if somebody's incarcerated for a crime, there's nothing that would keep them from walking out the door of an external behavior. It's complicated, right? And so there's all these different policies and the prosecutor has to agree that they will divert a certain amount of different charges to this behavioral care center and design the program to help people comply. But that is real time. That letter came Friday in my email. And that's a place, Sally, where your voice as an individual with what you care about, or as a task force, a statement to county council or a statement to the prosecutor's office to say, we support this and don't forget these 5 things. And when you're making policies about who you're going to divert, please ask them if they're parents and do these 5 things because they have kids and like give them the information. I think that's a huge opportunity. So. And I have lots of other ideas. I mean, I hope this is the first of many conversations because this is a big, it could make a big difference to our community if we get it right. So I see other questions in the chat and I don't know if you want me to try to address them and Barry, I feel like Councilmember Barry was inviting a memo from the Child and Family Wellbeing Task Force to County Council to address your concerns and what you'd like to see happen. I actually would love to just forward you the packets as I receive them too and say, I think you should come to this meeting so that when they say the jail should be 900 beds, you can be the voice that says, well, I think this instead. And so how is the jail taking into account criminalized parents and ways for children to be able to have visitation with their parents? As far as I understand, Susan, the current jail is not really taking that into account. It's not a question that is asked, I don't think. And that's why I think that the sheriff could come and speak to that better than I. But also just the space limitations. And I think they have to be careful about what benefits, quote, one person gets over another. And if they get to see their kid and somebody else doesn't. So I think I'm hopeful though, that in the design of the new jail, that they will take that into account. And with your voice and pressure and support, that will be more likely to happen. Is or will the jail be providing substance use disorder treatment and co-occurring disorders while in custody and help with stable housing when they get out so they aren't just cycling back over and over? That is what I'm fighting for, Christina. Please join that fight. I think that the goal is to provide SUD treatment across the entire jail. And then there's re-entry support and services that is operated as a different program, right? The sheriff doesn't operate re-entry. And so that's another place where that could be a partnership conversation with the people that I think it's Lifeline Connections that provide the re-entry services. But Barry, correct me if I'm wrong on that.
Just tell me when and where, and I will be
Okay.
there.
All right.
I have this lived experience. I lived with a partner, my daughter's father, in and out of the system since we were 15 years old until he died from a fentanyl overdose 2 years ago. I saw how that was for him, and I know how that was for his daughter and now for her children. And that cycle just repeats over and over again.
Yeah, I think those stories and voices, Christina, would make a big difference.
Sterling Chick again. My understanding is that the sheriff's department is rewriting their policies, and because they're going to have this new facility in there and have to. And one of the things I would say is that if a policy is written about something that's family friendly, especially for younger children, that's something that they can be held to. So at the policy level, at the very beginning, to have that be written down. But they would actually say, we are going to do this.
Yeah.
And then they're aligning with the prosecutor's office and the court system in general, that they're aware of things, because they're often are completely clueless about this. And that's my experience when I worked at CCS, them not having any sense of what they could order. And they could send them to wraparound programs, and they would go, and we'd go right there from get out of juvenile jail and go right into a program and get help right off the bat because it was ordered. And the families would often, because the judges and the prosecutors were involved, would be more likely to do that because they don't feel supported, and often the parent who's left, or often the grandparents who are taking care of the kids more than still parent. If they felt they had support, they would be more interested in following through with all the work they would have to do to get the kids that they were taking care of to see this parent who's in jail.
I learned today that there is actually a family offender sentencing alternative, and the prosecutor's office does have the discretion to divert people into that. And what that means is that they would have some sort of heavy supervision in the community and requirement to comply with different treatment and programs. And then they won't have to be incarcerated in our jail unless they don't comply, and then they get booked. But support from it's just, I think about where there are the unique coalition opportunities that would surprise people sometimes, because that is what gets people's attention. So having the Child and Family Wellbeing Task Force say, hey, Prosecutor Ritchie, we hear about this sentencing alternative. We want to learn more about how that works. What are the charges? How many people use it? What are the things they have to comply with? How do we support? And is there a community program that pairs up with the people that are in there? Because when I was doing the prosecutor files research, that is one thing that I noticed, is that prosecutors are trained for public safety. They're not always trained with social work lens. And so as I'm reading through these files and I'm seeing kids that, who's reaching out to the kid to help them in this? And if there isn't that link, right, and that connection, or a program that's developed around that, and I don't think there are that many that are actually connected to the information at the time of arrest or charging. So, but your support for those things would be helpful, because they tend to hear from the people that don't support it, right? They tend to hear from the loud people that say everything just needs to be locked up. So.
Thank you, Heather. I appreciate you sharing those connections. There are so many possible ways we could go here. My goodness. I wanted to give everyone a heads up. We do have about 3 minutes left here before we will need to transition to our next stage, just to keep a little on track. So just wanted to open up the floor. If anyone else who hasn't had an opportunity to speak has any thoughts or questions from the group.
I have a question, Heather. Do you know if I'm sure they're taking community input and voice throughout this process as well. Have they already started that, or is that going to remain ongoing?
Barry, you would probably have a better answer than I. I understand that STV is going to host a few community forums. They have not been scheduled. But that's not the only place.
No, that won't be the only place. There's one of the principals at STV is actually working on our community engagement plan, and they do expect to have a number of town halls. They'll be based on major milestones. So when we get when we get some sort of a design concept that people can look at, that will be something that we'll want to have the public look at before there's any decisions made. So I'm hoping that, you know, the timing is going to be such that we'll be able to, it won't take a whole lot of time for them to get these underway, because the public is itching to find out more about this project. And I hear questions every day, even at the grocery store. So
I love Susan's question in the chat, and I do hope you guys will have further conversation. I'm happy to come back anytime and brainstorm with you. And even if where you went from here is, let's write a memo about the things we care about that we want to make sure are addressed in the jail planning, that's a huge win. If you want to start coming to some of those task force meetings and listening in and seeing where there's places to use your voice, that's a huge win. I'm happy to share meeting agendas with all of you, especially when I see places where kids need to be advocated for, and just keep the information shared too. And then Sally, I know that I do share a ton of information, and I wish I could be a different presenter sometimes and just give you like, here's the 3 simple things, but it's not simple, it's so complicated. And so if you want to think bigger and do more, I'm all in to help with that, so.
Heather, thank you so much, man. I always appreciate your presentations because I always feel so energized and come out of these with more questions, things to want to chase down than when I started. So thank you so much for being here to share your wisdom. This will not be the last time that this task force discusses this. So Susan, to your question, yes, we will continue to have further conversations. So thank you all so much for this really productive time. And Heather, once again, thank you for sharing your insight and being here today.
Thanks for having me.
All righty. So with that, we will transition to our work regarding the Healthy Children's Fund. So hey, it's all full circle here. Vesla, I recall a note that you wanted to briefly touch on something with the PTC contract. Is that correct?
Yeah, I just, because of the nature of our meeting today and how we got a late start waiting for quorum, I just want to get like maybe a heads up or thumbs up, thumbs down. If you all received the letters from BTC, there's a little bit of conversation that needs to happen around that. We were hoping for a little time in this meeting. But I'm wondering if we are okay with us moving this to the Healthy Children's Fund subcommittee meeting to get started again on this conversation and keep going into this and then coming back to the task force. But maybe a quick fist of 5 if that's okay with you all. Or if you want to wait until if you want to keep the order of it being to the whole task force and then going to the subcommittee.
For everyone's information, the next subcommittee meeting is on Tuesday, September 2nd from 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock, and they meet over Zoom.
Thanks in the chat there. Anyone have any thoughts? Just to 5. See me and Sally 5. That's Liz. All right. Yeah, it's looking like folks are good to go with that, Vesla. So thank you for bringing that up. Appreciate it. And with that, we will transition to our second to last piece of business for today, the last being public comment. Jill, I understand there's been some good work happening in regards to the Healthy Children's Fund audit. It's something that we've been working towards for a while. And so thank you for letting us move this a little bit later in the meeting. So I wanted to open the floor because we'd love to hear about what's going on there.
Well, thank you. Thanks, Colton. Hi, everybody. So I'm hoping that you had a chance to take a look at the memo that was in your packet about the external evaluation process. So it's pretty self-explanatory, but right now we are working on a contract with SIVA Workshop. Vivian Savith is the principal we're working with. we're really excited about that response to our request for proposals. A little bit about Vivian. Some of you may have remembered her. She worked for Burke Consulting. And so back in 2022, she was one of the lead folks helping the Child and Family Wellbeing Task Force on the Whatcom County Strong Stable Families Fiscal Map. So I don't know if you may or may not remember her, but she has some great history with the county on working on these types of issues. So right now we're hoping to get that contract finalized by the end of this week, and then start working. Sarah and her team are already gathering things. They're gathering like data sets that they already have. We're gathering plans, any reports or things like that to lean forward. They're also gathering contact information for folks that the team can engage with some of their outreach to gather feedback. So it'll be a really good sort of hit the ground running process when we can get them under contract. I'm going to be out of the office from Friday until September 9. And so after we get back is when we're hoping to have just an internal kickoff. They're going to refine their process. And then we'd like to come to the next meeting scheduled in September 22nd to and ask for some time on this task force meeting in order for you to meet the team at SIVA workshop and go over what they've prepared, get any feedback from all of you on that. So that's kind of that's the update.
Jill, I have a question. Can you, because I didn't have time to fully read all of this information that you sent, can you do a brief kind of overview of like what's the memo and what's this evaluation report? Because there's a process can you kind of explain that a little bit more what you sent? Maybe I'm the only one who kind of missed it, but I'm trying to put it together, how the evaluation report goes in with this evaluator.
Not sure. I can share my screen, or if one of the team wants to share, I can kind of just show you. So the memo has the project schedule, so sort of what we've done to this point, what the task force role is, and then you have the entire response to the RFP from SIVA workshop, so you can kind of go through their entire proposal. Does that help?
I guess specifically, I was speaking of the relationship between the two reports or the two documents that were sent. There's this one, and then there was the evaluation report.
That did not come from me, so I'd have to have the folks. Well, and actually, Sarah's not here, so I don't know if Allison can speak to that or not. That was an internal evaluation that the folks at Health did.
Yeah, the evaluation report was just referenced in the latest Healthy Children's Funding update that Sarah had sent along, and so she had also wanted to attach the report in case folks wanted to dig into that more since it was discussed in this latest update. So nothing new necessarily to share with that, just making sure it's attached there since it's mentioned in Sarah's written report.
I would see no reason why we wouldn't put the exec's office and the proposed auditors on the September 22nd agenda. If that's is that the ask, Jill?
Yes, definitely.
And then maybe we can talk about at the subcommittee, the internal evaluation that came out, because it was beefy, and I also, Vesla, didn't have a chance to review all of that, and I'm sure a lot of folks are pretty interested, but they are very different, right? What you're proposing and what was done internally.
Right. The exec's office does the external evaluation, the external audit process. So on the memo, there's my email. When you get a chance to take a look at it and take a look at the proposal, just if you have any questions, let me know.
Thank you so much, Jill. Really appreciate you cover that. Seeing no other questions in the chat, actually have a little bit of time here. So what I would recommend we do, if we want to open up public comment, I think we can do that a little early. We don't have to be right on the mark. I'd love to open up some public comment. And then if there's time after the meeting, folks want to hang around and talk and debrief on some of the things we chatted about. It sounds like there's still some energy going around with the conversation on justice system. I think that would be kind of cool to do. So,
Colton, sorry, I'd like to pull back the agenda item of BTC then and kind of just give everybody a little overview, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Since we have the time, we took it off because we were worried about the time, but since we have it back, I'd like to talk about it.
Yeah, totally.
Awesome.
Would you prefer we do public comment first and then use that just so we have a better understanding? Okay, perfect. So yeah, we will open this up for public comment about 10 minutes early. Just as a reminder, we, as a practice, don't respond to public comment in this meeting, though if you want to leave any contact information, we may be able to follow up with you afterwards. If anyone is here to give some public comment, we just ask that you identify yourself for the record. With that, do we have anybody online or in the room who would like to make a comment?
Hello, this is Mark Hander with Lutheran Community Services Northwest, new service provider, relatively new in Bellingham in Whatcom County. And just one of the areas of our focus and strategies is around children and family and advocacy in the criminal justice system. So I'll keep my ears on where we and how we might align and partner.
Thanks so much, Mark. Appreciate you being here. Anyone else online? I have to compare the list here and see. Going. All right. Hearing no more. Mark, thank you so much for being here. I think this is your second time giving public comment, so you're really going for the gold star here. So I will close the public comment section at this time. And Vesla, I will open the floor to you. It looks like we have 15 minutes to chat about this.
Awesome. Hopefully you guys got a chance to read the letters submitted by BTC explicitly for the task force. I just wanted to prep the conversation grounded in our role in the Healthy Children's Fund implementation and in our ordinance. So one of our roles, as outlined in the ordinance, is to provide input on the implementation plan, to support and to add to the evaluation and the audit process, like we heard from Jill earlier today. So the task force was part of developing the implementation plan on part of the 23-24 plan. It was submitted and it was approved by the county council. And the purpose of the information that we got from BTC, the purpose of that contract was outlined in strategy 2 of the implementation plan. I'm going to put that in the chat real quick. So this strategy, number 2, specifically came from, built on the work from Healthy Whatcom, and which was getting input from those with lived experiences that highlighted the current gaps in care, and particularly for children with diverse needs, including children of color, those with medical complexities, and those with behavioral health challenges. So it's detailed on implementation plan what strategy 2 was supposed to do and the spending amount of $1.5 million over the first few years. And the task force also contributed significant information for those of you who were on here at the start regarding around the best use of ARPA dollars. And a lot of our recommendation was to help support and stabilize the workforce and continue to make it high quality as part of a crucial part of that. And the other role that the task force has is in section 5, item 2 of the ordinance that says, as part of our annual reporting to council and the performance audits, our input should be used to make improvements to fund administration. So with all of that background in mind, we wanted to ask you all as a task force, do we, as a task force, want to engage in this issue? And if so, how?
I'm just curious, Vesla, to understand, are there other providers in the community who we feel would have the capacity? Sorry, I should have raised my hand. Tilda just raised her hand. She should probably get answered before me. But I'm just curious, is there anyone else who could perform the same type of service here?
I don't have the answer to that question, and I think part of that maybe isn't the question of kind of how this is going, or maybe that's a question that we hear from the contract, you know, the people who have worked on it. I think it's more just sort of generally, I mean, it's a good question. I don't have the answer to that. Tilda, I think you're next.
I was just wondering if for folks that are on this call but didn't necessarily receive the information because they're not on the task force itself, do we want to provide just a real brief summary of what was sent out?
If you want to, I mean, it's hard to summarize in the 5 minutes, you know, that we have left.
Okay.
And I guess I don't think we need to get to like a vote, or and maybe the vote is, does it go to the Healthy Children's Fund subcommittee to talk about it? We just wanted to make sure, I think as the co-chairs who had this conversation or were given this information from BTC, that you all as a full task force were sort of prepped on some of this information. So that's kind of where we're at now, is just to kind of start that conversation. Sally?
I would say yes. I think that, to me, like where the tension is that we're hearing from BTC. They're obviously very frustrated by their experience with the exec's office. To me, that is great information and it's very informative, but the focus should be on where do we go from here, and making sure that the clear implementation priority that needs to be completed as far as workforce training and the opportunities needs to be moving forward. And I think that that is a role that the task force has in that voice. So it's where are we going from here and how do we help make that move forward? I don't think it's our role, nor do I think contract negotiations. And so I say with Jill, obviously here from the exec's office, I wouldn't, we recognize we're in our lane here on that regard, but we still need to see this come forward and it still needs to happen. How's that going to happen?
Sally, Jamie?
I think for me, as someone who obviously is entrenched in this work, there's just no other options. Like, no one else, including the implementation team, has thrown out any other options. Like, I don't know. It's frustrating for me as a provider that none of this money has been put towards workforce development yet. And there aren't any other ideas out on the table. And so for me, that as a provider, and I know I speak for other providers in this community, that is extremely frustrating, because we're being asked to do, more programs and more work, but there's still nothing for the providers. And that is a constant in this industry. And that is really hard. So I think it needs to be a priority, because there's nothing out there right now that's doing that.
Thanks, Jamie. Anybody else? Does anyone have any ideas about a task force action to do, or do you want to leave that up to the subcommittee?
I'm curious about whether the exec's office would come and tell us what the plan is for what's happening instead. If that's an opportunity that maybe we can make that invite because whether it's to the task force or to the subcommittee on what's in the works. That way we don't spin off on something if there's already a plan going out, or that there's something better happening, whatever it might be.
Okay, thanks, Sally.
So is that soliciting a comment from me, I'm assuming?
If you, yeah, I guess so. I mean, I think, yeah, I was thinking maybe more to whoever's chair of the subcommittee or the task force of making an official request that somebody come and speak to this once people have had an opportunity to think about it and prepare it. We, no one put anyone on the spot.
Yeah, I guess I would say I'll speak as a member of the task force. I'm confused as to why we're even having a conversation about this. And there's some assumptions made that now we've abandoned workforce development, which is not at all the case. So I think maybe the best course of action would to be at the September meeting, ask to have Sarah and the group come and talk about what they envision the work to be going forward. I think that would be focusing, like kind of like Sally, how you said, like, okay, well, where do we go from here? That probably be the best, most productive conversation.
I think some of the issues that are outlined in the letter that was given to us feels like it's referencing some of the process frustrations that folks have. So I'm wondering how we as a task force, and this is like kind of rhetorical again, it's not to put anybody on the spot, like how do we, does this fall within that role of fund administration, of how I think we have a lot of, Jill, to speak directly to you, I think we have a lot of questions about what's the plan then for strategy 2, and that feels like an important conversation, I think. And then I think the larger, or a part of it too, is like, how do we simplify this process
Yeah.
in general?
No, that makes some sense. So I think like peripherally right now, we had a really amazing session with the council on kind of updating them on the implementation plan work. And that entails a lot of sort of like what we've gotten accomplished, what's left to, what's left to accomplish in the strategies and things like that. And so I think that all of this can get wrapped up into the adoption of that implementation plan. I think this is good timing. So what we could do is then come in on September 22nd. In October is that a huge amount of outreach to the community about the draft implementation plan that's out there that still contains workforce development work, which is something that's out there and committed to. So I think that seems like a natural time to hear from the task force about what they would like to see moving forward. Is it exactly the same it was envisioned in 2023 during the original ideas, or has it shifted based on some of the work that has occurred in the last year and a half? So, and then there's a final implementation adoption by council in November by the end of the year. So I can see questions and conversation all wrapped up in that good amount of work being done between now and the end of the year.
Anybody else? I'm sure the subcommittee will talk a little bit more about this as part of their meeting next week. Any other thoughts that the larger task force wants to share? All right, thanks. You're always welcome. I'm a part of the subcommittee, or can email me if you have any ideas or anything else you want us to address. And anybody can come to those meetings, task force members or not, committee members as well. We just can't make quorum. So if you are a task force member and you would like to come, please let us know so we can prepare. We're plenty shy of making quorum, so there's a lot of room for folks to join those meetings, but it's just something we have to plan for. Great. Colton, anything else, or can we say thanks and goodbye?
Sorry, my internet cut out there for a second. Yeah, thank you all so much. I don't think we even need to make a formal vote to adjourn, so if no one else has any final thoughts, I think we're good to adjourn this meeting with the gavel, I guess.